As the dust settles around Don Waddell's hiring for the Blue Jackets, we're turning our attention back to the draft. We've got another draft profile as we look at Liam Greentree today on Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, over on YouTube and on SiriusXM. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Like I said at the top of the show, got another draft profile for you. I've got one half of Locked On NHL Prospects, Hadi Kalakeche, here to talk a little bit about Liam Greentree, who is a guy that has been crawling up some draft boards, kind of sneaky-like. So we're going to get into him and talk a little bit more about what the Blue Jackets could do at the draft this June. So I'm just going to get into my conversation with Hadi. Reports are out there that the Blue Jackets are looking to kind of pick up a second first-round pick. I don't know how they're going to do that yet, but if they do, Liam Greentree might be an option for them, kind of in that late first round. So I've got Hadi Kalakeche, one half of Locked On NHL Prospect, and the assistant director, I believe, over at Dobber Prospect. And we're going to talk all about Liam Greentree, who Hadi has just informed me outscored everyone else on his team by about 25 to 30% this season. So let's get into it. Obviously, the Spitfires were not great this season, but is Greentree really that much better than everyone else on the roster?
Yes and no. I think that, in terms of pure abilities, in terms of pure upside at the NHL level, no one compares to Greentree on this roster. Yeah, he scored 90 points in 64 games for Windsor, including 36 goals, and outscored everyone on his team by 24 points. So in terms of carrying his team, doesn't get better than that. He was one of only two CHL draft one of only two NHL draft eligibles playing in the CHL to wear a C on their jersey. It was him and Tanner Howe. And for good reason. Greentree was the key part on the ice that kept Windsor in games when they shouldn't be. This was a team that really struggled this season. And even Greentree, there was a pretty interesting progression in his game. Earlier on in the year, everyone, including myself, kind of just saw goal scoring. A bad skater with a big body who could kind of get off the boards and shoot from the slot fairly frequently. But as the season went on, the hockey sense just kept shining more and more and more, and he became one of the best playmakers in the OHL as well. So on top of being a good goal scorer, player who I think at the NHL level could score 25 to 30 goals, he's added a dimension to his game that really, really works. He's really good at playing give and goes, kind of passing the puck, moving into space, getting it back, and just kind of building play incrementally. So he's not a player who necessarily sees passing as just a way to get a primary assist. He's a player who sees passing as a way to kind of chess his way up the ice. And that I find really, really interesting in Greentree's game. And I think that if you can build the game around that concept, if you can build your roster in a way that you're really playing chess on the ice instead of just running and gunning, playing kind of counterattack hockey, I think you've got a really good shot at making Liam Greentree a very, very good potential top six player.
So when we were kind of discussing which prospects we were going to discuss in this recording, you immediately were like, yes, let's talk about Liam Greentree. Why is that? Why are you so high? Like, obviously, we've just talked about like what intrigues you about him, but like, why are you so high on Liam Greentree as opposed to kind of some of the other players that are going to be available in that kind of maybe 15 to 20 range, which is, I think, what most rankings have him as?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, what makes Greentree so interesting is that the things that he needs to work on are things that have gotten easier and easier to work on with time. Power skaters have gotten better. The understanding of what makes good skating mechanics has grown and improved over the last couple of years in the NHL. So I think that he's got a really good shot at improving on the one thing that he needs to improve on. And I think that in terms of his skating ability, if his skating improves, the rest of his game gets elevated because he already thinks at an NHL pace. He already processes the game at an NHL pace. He just doesn't have the footwork yet. But if you combine the footwork, if you get the footwork up to speed with the brain, you've got a fantastic player. And that's the main part that makes me so happy to talk about Liam Greentree. He is so smart. I watched, for example, Trevor Conley, who plays with the Tri-City Storm in the USHL. If you watch him play, you really can see how everything he does is in the objective of getting a goal or a primary assist. When he passes the puck, it's because he thinks he's going to get the primary assist on the goal. He passes to create immediate scoring chances. Liam Greentree can make one pass that leads to 5 shots. That's the difference for me. Is he knows how to slow down the play, how to draw players in, how to make the right pass at the right weight at the right moment. That understanding of passing as a means rather than an ends is what really made me so interested in Liam Greentree as a prospect to start with. And again, like I said, the skating is something that I think can be worked on in his game. It's not fundamental lackings. It's just he's big, he's heavy, and he still hasn't figured out stride depth. But that's something that power skating usually fixes. So I think the one big issue in his game can be fixed, and the plus of his game, the intangibles, the things that are difficult to teach, he already has. That's what makes him so interesting for me, and that's why he can show up anywhere on boards. He's number 13 on our board at Dauber Prospects, right around where I would have him. He's as high as number 6 on one board. He's as low as 25 on another. So there's a wide range of where people kind of project him based on his big weakness of his skating, but I think that it can be fixed, and that's why we have him higher than consensus.
Obviously, like, development is not linear, and players are not, like, it's so hard to look at a player and be like, you are exactly 2.5 years away from an NHL job. But, like, how do you see Greentree's progression? Like, obviously, he's probably a little bit more of a project than some of the other guys that are kind of being talked about as first-round picks. But is he a guy that, probably goes back to Windsor next season, continues to tear it up? And then is he a guy that as soon as he turns 20 makes the AHL and tears it up there? Or is he a guy that you think is probably going to take a little bit longer, and it'll probably take a little bit more kind of a slow year in the AHL and then another year in the AHL and then finally making it to the NHL and kind of going up that way? Like, what do you see his progression as like?
Yeah, usually the prospects who see B kind of long-term projects are the prospects who haven't figured out the decision-making, the habits, all the things that lead to good results, at least in a bottom 6 at an NHL level at minimum, right? I think with Liam Greentree, that's not the problem. His awareness, his decision-making, his habits are really, really, really good. He's good defensively as well, so he's reliable in his own zone. That's why he's a captain. That's why he's been so effective. That's why he's been playing so often per game for Windsor in the OHL. I don't think that Greentree is going to need as much time as Beckett Seneca, for example, because he understands how to play in a way that's translatable, that's projectable. I think developing consistency will be one thing, but if you're playing in the bottom 6, if your offensive consistency isn't all there, it's not the end of the world. So I think that Greentree is going to spend a lot of time in an NHL bottom 6, but eventually we'll get to a top 6. We'll get to a level where one year he just elevates his game to another level and hits it off and becomes a true top 6 player. And I think that's going to come sooner than later. So I think that by the time he's 20, I'd be surprised if we don't see Greentree play at least 5 NHL games. And then within the next couple years after that, he should slowly but surely climb his way onto a top 6. I don't think that's out of the question.
I've got more of my conversation with Hadi in just a second, but first I've got to tell you all about Game Time. Game Time is the best ticketing service out there. They are the official ticketing service for the NBA. It's the best one. Like, I could talk about their last minute deals. I could talk about their all-in prices, their low price guarantee. They've got views from your seat. Like, there are so many different cool features that I can talk about. And it's not just sports. They've got concerts, they've got comedy, they've got theater, they've got deals on everything. I've mentioned the lowest price guarantee. If Game Time finds tickets in your section and row for less on somewhere else, they will credit you 110% of the difference. They've got the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And my personal favorite is their all-in pricing feature. So you can get the total up front, which means that you don't get to the checkout and find like $50 in surprise fees added for you, like on some other ticketing services. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. This is kind of more of an OHL thing, I guess, more than anything. But if he feels like a great candidate for Windsor to trade next season and get like a bajillion draft picks back in the way that the CHL is like, yeah, we traded this one player and got 18 draft picks back. Like, is he a guy that you think is a candidate to go to a better OHL team and maybe get some playoff experience and things like that? Or is he a guy that you think is probably he's going to stick it out with the Spitfires?
For sure. I think captains get traded in the CHL a lot more frequently than they do in the NHL. That's for sure. I don't think it's out of the question. I think it would be good for his game to learn how to play with better players. Because that's the thing is once you get to the NHL, I don't think Greentree's going to have to carry his team on every shift. Like, I don't think that's going to be A, good for his game, and B, realistic, because he's going to be playing with players who think the game at a high level, who play at a high level, and play at high speed as well. So learning to play with those guys, learning to keep up with them mentally, is going to be super important for his game. So if by some miracle the London Knights pull off a trade to get Liam Greentree on their roster,
that feels unfair.
It does seem unfair, but it does seem like a very London Knights thing to do. Yeah, like that's the thing is that it really seems like a London Knights thing to do. He seems like a player that they could target, but if it's not London, it can be Saginaw, it could be Oshawa. I think the Greentree would be really interesting next to Beckett Seneca over the next few years. That would be quite interesting in terms of a combo of skills. But yeah, I think overall I don't think it should be the objective to get him into a better team. I think that, the OHL changes very quickly. So who knows? Windsor might be a contender next year. Like, there's no way to predict that. But if, depending on the circumstances, if Windsor's still not playing playoff hockey, not playing at least meaningful playoff hockey, I think it would be a good idea at the deadline to see him moved to a team that is going to see playoff hockey, because I think that's where it's key, because in tournaments so far, Greentree has been a bit underwhelming. In the regular season for Windsor, he's been amazing. But, I want to see a bit more from him in key moments and key, do-or-die games. And we haven't really seen that as often from Greentree this year. He hasn't had a lot of opportunities to showcase that do-or-die kind of clutch ability, like we see, for example, with Zeev Buyam, which like all he's been doing all year is just playing do-or-die games and just excelling in them. We haven't seen that yet from Greentree, and that's a challenge for me so far, is I want to see that from him. So a move to an OHL team that will play do-or-die games, I think, would be great, but I don't think it's necessary to see him kind of reach his full potential.
Yeah, I guess it's the argument of, like, would you rather have him be the guy on a team, or would you rather him kind of play a lesser role on a better team? And I guess it really depends on the NHL team that drafts him and how they value, like, player development, which I guess kind of leads into kind of my next question is, like, obviously the Blue Jackets right now don't have a draft pick that they could use on Greentree unless he somehow falls to 36th. They're not taking him at 4th. That feels wild to even think about. Yeah. But is that kind of the development program at Columbus something that you think that Greentree could kind of thrive in? I think that's one of their biggest strengths over the last few seasons has been how they develop their prospect right up until they hit the NHL, and then they sit on the bench for 18 minutes at a time or whatever. It's fine. We don't need to get into that right now, but it feels like the prospect development program for the Columbus has been really great in terms of getting players to be their best in the AHL, in the CHL, in the NCAA. Do you think he could thrive in a system like that, kind of working with the kind of the development program that the Blue Jackets have?
Sure, absolutely. I think that the improvements in players like Marchenko and Chinakhov to a certain extent, these are two players that have improved their skating strides. I think that Columbus doesn't have too much of a problem developing skating strides, and that's a big setback with Greentree. Like, it's obvious whenever you watch him that this is a player who, his stride is heavy, his weight is too flat on his skates, and doesn't bend the knees as well. These are things that it'll take some time, I think, to get up to kind of an NHL level, but you can get that done. But the brain's already there, the hands are already there, the shot, the hands, the passing. Like there's so much that's already NHL ready that I think that this is kind of like a layup for the development team at Columbus. Just a very easy prospect that you know exactly what you need to work with. You know exactly what you need to develop. You don't head into it with any surprises or anything that, oh, I didn't expect us to have to work on this. Now we have to work on this as well, which is a whole nother bag of tricks we have to open. So it's like, I feel like this is the easiest. If you like your development team, you'll give them this prospect. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. Liam Greentree to me feels like the kind of prospect that's going to go to the Minnesota Wild at like 18, and then in 2 years' time, everyone's going to be like, "How the heck did Minnesota do this?" Because I feel like they always do this. But obviously we talked a little bit about like his skating is the thing that he needs to work on. Obviously, is that something that you think is that he needs an NHL level skating coach, or is it just reps? Because I feel like at this age there are very few prospects that don't need to work on their skating, and it's just a case of more skating at a higher level and reps. Is it that, or is it something that you think he could really benefit from a dedicated and the NHL team that drafted him paying for a skating coach to go back to wherever he lives during the summer, Oshawa apparently, and like just working with him specifically on his skating? So is it a teaching thing or is it a reps thing?
I think it's really a mechanics thing, and that's a bit tougher to work with because you develop mechanics kind of organically based on your body weight distribution. If you don't tell a player how to skate, they'll develop a skating stride that fits the way that their weight is built, that their body's built. That's going to be tough to rework. I don't think it's really just a reps thing. Because these things actually usually these problems accentuate with reps that aren't, I don't want to say controlled, but supervised in a way or kind of guided in the right direction. If you don't guide Greentree's skating stride and skating mechanics in the right direction, I think this problem is just going to get worse as he grows, as he adds weight, as he, all that good stuff. So I think that this is something that the earlier you tackle it, the better, because, if you can put the axis on skating mechanics, if you can teach him how, to rework his stride around his frame to kind of, sometimes you have to go back to the basics. I think of, I think it's Yegor Sidorov, who's a prospect of the Ottawa Senators. He went to Barb Underhill, and Barb Underhill got him, kind of basically reworked him from the beginning, went back to the types of skating drills you show to like literal babies and children learning to skate, like just back to the full basics because it needed so much work. I think it's kind of the same thing with Greentree, but to a lesser extent. I don't think skating is as bad as that player's was, but yeah, overall, like the idea is to nip this problem in the bud, because the longer you let this happen, the longer you let him kind of get reps with his current skating stride, I think the worse this is going to get. So the right team's going to be able to kind of intervene as quickly and as accurately as possible to stop this before it happens.
Which kind of follows on to a thought I was having, which is, so I, Locked on Blue Jackets, we recently we're doing our like player season reviews, and we just recently did Dmitry Voronkov, who is a good player in many ways, but is not the most graceful skater in the world, let's say. Yeah. He does kind of skate like someone's put a grizzly bear on a pair of skates. But he's made that work for him, and I don't think he's ever going to be the best skater in the world, but he's kind of made his game fit his skating style. Is there a possibility of that with Greentree, or do you think he needs to fix his skating style or he'll never be an NHLer? Is there a world in which he kind of does the Voronkov thing, or the Dylan Strome is the big name that I always think of? Looks like a cartoon character when he skates, but gets the job done. Is that a similar thing with Greentree, or do you think it's serious enough that it is? If he doesn't fix his skating, he will not be an NHLer.
No, I don't think it's that bad. And I think that skating concerns are overrated. If you look at, I'd say 99% of NHLers don't have a perfect skating stride. Not everyone's Connor McDavid or Kyle Connor or Matt Barzal, or there are a few examples of players with perfect skating strides. But I would also say like 90% of those with perfect skating strides are darn good players. Players who can impact the game at a high level. So for me, it's just, I don't think it's a square versus rectangle thing where it's like, not every rectangle is a square, but every square is a rectangle, that kind of thing. I think that it's important to put the axis on developing the skating. I think without his skating, he's still going to be an NHLer. He's still going to be a player who plays in the bottom six, who gives you good impact defensively, who does the right things in transition to create offense, but he's going to be limited. He's going to be a player who can't escape pressure, who can't, deke through layers as effectively. So for me, it's just getting that skating up to par unlocks so much upside, so offense that you wouldn't have if you don't, but you're still getting an NHLer if you don't figure that part out, I still think.
Yeah, I want to finish off by talking about a Blue Jackets prospect that by the time this episode goes live, I believe the Memorial Cup will have already happened. But I want to talk about Denton Matejchuk, who just wrapped up a pretty darn good regular season with the Moose Jaw Warriors and then entered at just an entirely new level for the playoffs. How excited should Blue Jackets fans be about Denton Matejchuk kind of taking that jump to pro? Because he's going to turn pro after the Memorial Cup. The question is really, is he going to be with the AHL or the NHL come October? Like, what should Blue Jackets fans be excited about for Denton Matejchuk?
Absolutely. So with Matejchuk, you're getting a very daring offensive player on the defensive side. So for me, this is a player who I think has the most has more chaos that I'd be comfortable with as an NHL coach. Like, he is very chaotic. I've seen him retrieve his own dump-ins and stay behind the net and try to wrap around, that kind of stuff all on his own. He is fairly chaotic, but I think that he's reined in the defensive chaos a lot. He's gotten a lot more calm and composed on the defensive side of the puck. His stick work has gotten a lot better. He's still relatively, compared to other defensemen, he's not a powerhouse. He's not a physical monster, but he's still able to handle physical scenarios. He's still able to escape the boards. I think you're getting a second pair defenseman in Denton Matejchuk in the future, but a darn good one at that. A player who can play on your top power play potentially, who can kind of dominate in transition as well. I really like his combination of skating and hands and dare. Like, it works really well. So there's a lot to love here in Matejchuk. I think that he's a unique prospect. He's the closest thing to Pavel Mintyukov, other than Pavel Mintyukov in terms of the overall skill set and tools and the way he plays. But obviously a shorter version of Pavel Mintyukov, which honestly I think Blue Jackets fans should be happy with. Like, that's a good player.
If Denton Matejchuk turns into Pavel Mintyukov, like, I would not be even a little bit mad about that. Having seen more of the Ducks play hockey this season than I really care to. I've watched a lot of Pavel Mintyukov, so he is a lot of fun. And if Matejchuk turns into him, I think we should take that and run, quite frankly. Sure. If people want to learn more about Greentree, if they want to learn more about prospects in general, where can they find you and your work online, Hadi?
Absolutely. So wherever you're listening to this, just look up Locked On NHL Prospects, and you'll find Sebastian and I talking about prospects 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. If you're looking to kind of follow me on Twitter to keep up with my general work, obviously I post the podcast episodes there, but everything else I do goes on Twitter. It's the one-stop shop. If you're listening on YouTube, the handle's right below my face. My handle is HadiK_scouting. This HADIK _scouting. Again, everything I post goes there. So if you want to make sure you don't miss anything I do, just follow me on Twitter and you'll get all of it.
And that's about all I've got for today. We will be back tomorrow for just probably a little bit of a roundup of all of the news that has been happening in the Blue Jackets world this week, because there's been a lot of it. I've been Jay Foster. Thank you for listening. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us for free and readily available on YouTube, on SiriusXM. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day every single day. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.